Good day and welcome to the AgFlow webinar on Tradeflows. In fact, this is the first AgFlow webinar for the company. My name is Raymond Rogers, and my professional career spanned 35 years as senior researcher and research manager for Continental Grain and then Cargill International. I retired from the Cargill World Trading Unit in Geneva, Switzerland in 2010, and my current role is heading up project development for AgFlow. Today, I'm going to be talking to you for 20 minutes and giving an explanation about Tradeflows and a live demo of how to make a report, and 10 minutes will be allotted to questions. There is a chat window on the right side of your screen. You may submit questions during the presentation, and my colleague Tess will collect them for me to answer after the live demo. And if I can't answer them, we will get back to you with an answer. Tradeflows. What are Tradeflows about? Tradeflows are vessel lineups, and these lineups are a key element in the S&D analysis for determining price trends in the agricultural trade. And also they're used in analysis of distribution logistics. The only other source of data on commodity and product movement is customs data, and of course many of you know that is anywhere from 1 month to 3 months late. So the pain point, and I don't mean main point, the pain point for many of you who want to use or who are using vessel lineup data is that the global capture is a labor-intensive process due to the normalization of the data. The solution that we are proposing from AgFlow is that we give you one standard, one location, multiple providers, that is one-stop shop, so that you can spend less time on data collection and normalization and more time on market analysis. We started vessel lineups in October of 2015 with a Brazilian provider, and today we have built that up to 9 providers, which are maritime agencies, port agencies, inspection agencies, private and governmental both, and consultants. These 9 providers are there now, and we are still in conversation and talks with additional providers. The AgFlow goal is very simple. It's to engage and blend the best sources of vessel lineup data to give the fullest and most accurate picture of what is being moved in the world of agricultural commodities and products. It's a process, and so far we have succeeded in getting this far. And let's take a further look at what we really are doing. We have in this slide on the left is the tonnage that the vessel lineup has captured for 2016. And then the third column is the tonnage captured in 2017 to the end of April. I ranked them by tonnage so that you can see that the first 7 commodities down through rapeseed are really 90% of what we captured in 2016. And then below that, we have other grains, oils, protein meals, etc. At the bottom, you will see others, which is 18 million tons for 2016 and some 7 million tons for 2017. These are categories that the providers give us information on, and they can be rice, sugar, wheat products, oats, corn oil, even biodiesel, cotton oil. So these are other categories we are capturing, but we're not focusing on expanding on them. If we get them, fine. If we don't, we aren't looking at the full coverage for these yet. On the right side, the same numbers, but sliced and diced in a different manner, is that the South America is the biggest tonnage that we have under the vessels. North America, Black Sea, North Europe, Australia, and Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia being mostly palm oil, but there may be some soybean meal in that. So that is the current status of what we've captured. We have 2015 data, but it's not complete. Now, while that is tonnage, the question that we have to ask ourselves here, if we're doing a good job, what percentage of the world bulk trade are we actually capturing? And here again, we're not really looking. So we've taken USDA data, we've taken oil world data, and we have to try to adjust out certain things such as containers and land shipments, etc. And our assessment is that for corn, soybeans, and sun seeds, and we're 90%, and for wheat, we're getting closer to be 90%. And then for the rest of the sorghum, barley, we're lower. And you can sense in all this of the 14 commodities and products that we're focused on, we're probably having the more difficult time with the protein meals and the oils, but we are getting there. We don't, in this analysis, try to look at movement from origins that are not really players. So let's say example, say palm oil out of Brazil. We don't really look to capture that. We want the big movers and the bigger destinations. In the terms of the geographic, this is a little bit of a game plan for us. Looking at this, we tried, when we saw the tonnage, you saw that we were at totally at 83%, let's say plus 80%. So that's a tonnage-based way of looking at it. On a geographic basis, this is the commodities on the left, the countries across the top, and what you see in blue is what we're capturing now, and we believe we're doing a good job of capturing it. And what those blue ones, and I put on the United States, we're using inspection data, which is quite complete in many ways. So if we take a look at what those blue cells of the total cells that we want to use for capturing data, we are just slightly over 82%, which by chance is very close to the 83% that we're doing on the tonnage analysis of what our coverage is. The orange areas represent work in progress, and as you can see geographically, Canada has been a little bit of a problem area, but we're going to resolve that. Brazilian wheat, and we're resolving that one. And then that leaves us with the red cells, where we're having a little bit of difficulty in getting that ironed out, but that tends to be the soy meal, and that's important because that's 10 million tons a year out of the U.S. of a total movement of 65 million. And then the soy oil from Brazil, which are mainly top-offs of the Argentine vessels, plus the U.S. vessels. And then we have the rape meal and rape oil in Canada and Australia. And we will add sun oil out of Turkey. And then we do have information on Indonesian palm movement, but it's not complete yet. We have to work on that. So if we get our work in progress in order geographically in our minds, we will be getting close to 88% or close, just under 90. And there may be some other areas we should focus on, such as Chinese soy meal exports, but they tend to be a lot of container shipments and not the bulk vessels. So there's work to be done there. As a recap, let's say of the 14 major commodities and products that we have 80% or better coverage. We have 100,000 vessel records since January 2015, and that's an assessment of the bulk records. We have, if we had to add another 25,000 for containers, which we have out of the United States and Russia, that would boost that number. And we do try, when we get parcels, we get cargo ships with different parcels. If the parcels are the same commodity or product, then we collapse them into one record. Or if the ship is handling, let's say, soybeans and corn, then it becomes two records. 47,000 records in 2016 and 14,500 in 2017. While we're concentrating on the main origins, we do have 60 origins in this and 280 loading ports. The updates by the 9 providers depend. Some do daily, some do 2 times a week, weekly, and then there are 1 or 2 that do only monthlies. And we're encouraging the ones that only do monthlies to be a little bit more boost their frequency to weekly. Then you should note that most providers, they will, at the beginning of the month, they will do a revision of the previous month. It's a type of due diligence in order to say that they're in sync with the official data when they get it. And that means if you run reports, and then later on you run reports, you may find that the numbers historically have changed to somewhat. The normalization of the nomenclature of status, commodity and project designation, spelling of country, destinations across all providers has gone from being a nightmare to being a ongoing process as we move to a more generic environment of classifying what the providers are sending us. But you have to remember, some of the providers are not of English mother tongue, so they have spellings differently. They have different ways of designating their products and commodities, and this will still be a process for a while. We do get duplicates because we have more than one provider, and that way we have an algorithm which then removes the duplicate, which we believe is less interesting, and keeps the better one. An example of that would be if we have a cargo which is exactly giving the number of tons versus a more rounded number, we'll take that number as being the better record. Looking forward onto what we want to do with this environment of trade flows is our goal is to have 90% plus coverage for each of the 14 commodities and products. We will look eventually at reconciliation of announced destination to actual port and country arrival. Although we are putting some rules in place to try to catch movements that may not be correct. And an obvious one is when we see vessels that have soy meal as a cargo and China as a destination, usually something is not right there, and that has to be corrected. Either it's soybeans or the vessel's going to another destination. The creation of reports based on estimated arrival time, so that means setting up a table of sailing days based off of the sail dates when the vessel leaves the ports. We will try to aim to get more coverage on container shipments. And then for the pivot tables, which you will see in a moment, we would like to create an environment as we have with the OTC prices that you can have a favorites, that once a report is created, you can go back to that report and that report will update with the latest data. And then to give you more enhanced reporting formats. The overview of the Tradeflows homepage, we have about 12 records here, and just very quickly, I will make a point that we've grouped the fields by export, so you have the region, country, and port, and then for the destinations, that's the import grouping, which is the same as the export. One element there is the port of arrival. Is not really used right now very much, but we hope will be used in the future. Then on the right side where you see cargo and the blue line, that we have moved we've made groupings of the commodities and products at different levels of hierarchy, and then we've added the cargo origin, which I'll come back to in a moment. Other than that, you have the vessel, charter, shipper, status, and date, and then the volume. And you do not have the charter and shipper for every origin, depending on the way the origins function. In general, you would have good coverage of that type of information in South America and the Black Sea. You will have also you see the red line pointing down to updates by export country. This is a table which allows you to see when the last updates have been made. And if you're running reports off of this, this becomes an important element of what you want to look at when you're doing a report. The system is dynamic, so the reports may be there may be updates done any time of the week or any time of the day. Then we have a tutorial, and then we have a user guide. And what's important about the user guide, it gives you the detail of our groupings of geographies and commodities and products. And that is that has to be transparent to you to understand what are in these groupings, and these groupings may change over time. And the last thing before we leave this page is that in the circle, the green circle, which says pivot mode, that is your access to running a pivot report. And that will be the next slide. And when you go to the pivot report, the one item you want to note is that we have at the top a market year start, and in this case it's defaulted to July. We know for those of you who deal heavily in freight, January, December is the normal year, but for those dealing in commodities and growing seasons, that you will at times want to run reports on the marketing year of the countries. The number that you see in this under volume is the total amount tonnage that in millions of what we have in the database since 2015. Now, if I've inserted a table here to talk about the fields which are on the right. Only I'll make a couple of comments. The export country and the cargo origin country are very similar. The difference is that the export country is the country in which the ports are, and the cargo origin is the country designation of where the product or commodity is coming from. The classic example here is Argentina. If you use export country for Argentina, you only see Argentina as the origin. If you use the cargo origin, you will see Argentina, Paraguay, and Bolivia. Looking at the commodity names and products, the group that you would use most is the subgroup. And in this subgroup, we have 40 classifications. And that is what we've taken from the incoming data from the providers. And if you go to the cargo detail group, which is under the cargo subgroup, you would have 153 different classifications. And if you go to the cargo details, what you would see soy meal versus soy pellets, or expellers, or cakes, or if you wanted to look at wheat, you would start seeing the hard red winter wheat from the United States versus durum. It gives you much more detail. And then at the bottom of this slide, you will see exports to CSV. That means once the report is generated, then you would end up having the ability to export the report into an Excel sheet. Now, before I go to the live demo, it's unfortunate, but I have to tell you that what we're doing is not free of charge. And this, for some of you, may be the first time, or if you're new, you will see that what we have in our subscription plans is a breakdown of buying the OTC prices. And by the way, we're uploading 50,000 physical prices a month. And that's the one is 3,900. For the Tradeflows, you have the option of taking grains, oilseeds, proteins, liquids at each $2,000 a year, or as the most popular choice, which we would think you would find is the most popular, would be to buy the whole package for $7,500. And if you're representing a bigger country, you would then contact us for an enterprise offers. 14-day free trials available if you just go to the website, sign on. For users who have been in AgFlow before and want to extend their free trial, contact sales@agflow.com. And for those who are now clients and wish to upgrade to Tradeflows, you have to contact the same sales@agflow.com. Now, let me move on very quickly because I know you're all busy and you don't want to be here with me all afternoon. We'll go to a live demo, and I have to bring up the... Okay, so this is what you would see when you come into the Tradeflows. As I've already mentioned, that if you hit the update button, you'll start seeing when things have been updated. And actually, this is a good one because at 12:22 today, the U.S. was updated at 4 o'clock this morning, Argentina, Uruguay, Ukraine at 1 o'clock, and Australia at 11 o'clock. It's not often you see so many things at one time, but that's what's happened today. And then the rest of them have been updated on May 2nd. And we have some laggers here that we will deal with. Then on the filters here, it's important that you understand that you actually can filter out things. And I'll just do a real quick one for you. We'll take Argentina. We'll get down to just that. And we want to take a look at the, let's say we do a subgroup of major commodities, corn, and if we do soy, we can do soybeans, soy meal, and soy oil, and we apply that filter, and then you'll see the loadings that are taking place with those commodities. And I think one of the important points to understand is that if you take away the sailed vessels, the ones that have left, and you apply the filter, then you're seeing what's coming in, what is expected, and if actually what is maybe in operation, what's being loaded, and that's really timely information. And that's one of the reasons we're doing the trade flows. In this particular case, if you want to look at what, even if you want to look at what your own company is doing or what your competitor is doing, you have this option in the South American module, and you take ADM as an example. I've taken them because they're alphabetically easy to reach. Not that I'm picking on ADM. And you'll start seeing what vessels are loading out of Argentina for ADM. And here again, we're missing a few of the country destinations because they haven't been announced, etc. So that's what you can work with on the face of the fields. Now, if we go to the pivot mode, you enter into this, and as I said, if we want to do something different than July, we just say that now. Other than that, you go to the fields, and I'm quickly going to come up with a small report for you. And I'll start by taking bringing the year down here to filters, and I will only stay with 2017 just to limit the data. And so we apply the filter, and you see the number drops to 204 million tons. That's how much tonnage we have for 2017 so far. Then we add in a cargo subgroup by dragging this down, and we will be very simple about this today. And we'll just take soybeans, and the soybean applies. So we see that we have, since January, 47 million tons or 48 million tons of soybean movement. We bring down then the export countries. So let's do the cargo origin. And so we see Paraguay, Brazil, and you can sort this at this level. You can see that Brazil, United States, Argentina. Now we're picking up things from Spain, India, Poland. These are not important. You can filter them out. You don't have to look at them, but they are there. The Russian data is, it's not actually vessel. This provider gives us the rail shipments across the border into China, so we have that. Then we can we'll bring down the month, since we know that we're only in 2017. And we'll start seeing what the monthlies look like across the board. And of course, you get to, as you go out here, you'll start seeing the movements. For April, we can see that Brazil, United States were the big suppliers. Now there'll be some vessels here that will have probably not sailed, so they will end up, as they start to do the reconciliation at the end of the month, they'll be moved over into the period of May. And if you want to go ahead, and I'll use import region because it's just a bigger way of looking at things. If you did this and you take the month of April, you would then see, and you start opening this up, you'll see the destinations. And of course, if you bring this over, oh, sorry about that. If you bring this over to the month of May, you're then seeing where the loadings that are designated with the destination, where they're going. You see in this particular case that 232,000 tons are expected or are loading, and they don't have the destinations on them yet. And it's obvious that China will be the bigger destination. that report formatting you can play around with, you can do many things with. And then if you want to export it, you would export it to a CSV, which you, sorry, I think this will come up. It's opening here. So this is where we need to do some enhancements, but you can actually export this report for further processing. And if we do our job, eventually you'll be able to have a nicer looking report that you can use with other people. Okay, I think I've done a little bit more than 20 minutes, maybe 25. So I thank you for staying with me. And so one of the questions is, lineup is nominated vessels or all vessels at the port. These are vessels that have been designated to load a certain commodity. So if this question is coming back to whether we're looking at congestion and whether just boats are there, that's something that we're not answering with this very well. If I think I've got that question right. So it's really when the agent or whoever is looking is that they know that the vessels are coming to berth and they have assigned a commodity to them. Just keep in mind that for the United States and for Russia for the time being, and maybe some others, we don't have this concept of arrivals and expected and loadings. We do have it for Australia. So I have another question about Australian customs numbers. Well, we don't really deal with Australian custom numbers. Australia is exceptional. We have a consultant who's doing this for us, because in Australia the main exporters, because of from the Australian government, there has to be some transparency about loadings, and so they publish the stems. So we see what's loading in Australia, and then what the consultant needs to do is locate the destination of where the vessel is going. There are a few ports where they don't have to comply with this Australian requirement, and that would be Bungie and Bunbury. And then there's the public port in Queensland, but that data does come later. So from the point of view, what they do in Australia, they come back and they will match it to the customs data. It works out very well. It's pretty high, good numbers, except for the customs numbers. You get another aspect. You get the container shipments. In Australia, that could be anywhere from 3 to 4 million tons a year. So here again, I have to come back to, we're only doing the bulk vessels, and if we have some means to look at the container shipments, we will do that down the road. And I'm looking at my colleagues for another question. One question is, the data for the United States. I tell you, this is what some other governments could do too, but the U.S. data is very detailed, and it can be broken down. If you look under the port for the U.S., you'll see Gulf, you'll see Pacific, you'll see Atlantic, and you could actually even go further than that in some other detail, which I don't think we're putting in the database. And the thing with the U.S. inspections data, that if you see small quantities, you know they're containers. As an example, the soybeans going to Indonesia, they go out in these containers of 490 tons, and they're just it's actually quite. But you do have the breakdown by port area of the U.S. data, and what we have to assume with U.S. data, once it's inspected, that your ship is not going to sit around in port for very long, and so that the inspection date becomes our sailing date. I hope that answered the question in the U.S. What we don't have in the U.S., as I said before, is soy meal and soy oil, and that we're working on. I think I've taken much of your time today, and I wish to thank you. And if you have questions, do not hesitate to contact us. Thank you very much.